Okay, so what I want to talk about was exactly what I sent you, which is I'll read the text. I can um, I can talk about things going at the pace of thought, and Negative emotions arise when someone tries to go faster than that. Negative emotions equals someone tries to go faster than thought.
The the thoughts in your head.
Sure.
What if you try to go faster than someone else's thinking capability? For example, if you're in a conversation with someone who's not able to comprehend what you're saying at the pace at which you're saying it, or maybe they're not speaking the language you speak, or something like that.
Yeah.
What are you referring to?
Um. Okay. So one time that this, let me reflect and find a good time. One time that this comes up a lot is the feeling at the end of the day. Okay, so the feeling at the end of the day where you feel like you should have gotten more done.
I don't have that part of the day. I usually pass out at some point when I can't stay awake any longer.
Mm.
Okay, so let's just create a what is it, like a scenario. It's the end of the day. Are you talking about before you go to sleep, or prior to that, or I mean, what is your nighttime routine?
I don't have one.
Okay, no routine. So when does this typically occur for you? This this
Oh, okay.
reflection.
Okay, so first, here's an example. On this last Friday, I told someone that I was gonna get like two things done.
Mm-hmm.
However, the first thing took a lot longer than expected, and so I could only get the first thing done. To put into the words what these are, the first one was get a server up and running on a remote computer, and then the second part was going to be connecting them and setting it up so the data is written onto a database, right? But I could only get the first part done, and actually I was practicing doing exactly what I'm saying, which is things can only move at the speed of thought. And so I asked myself the question, like, could I have done both? Like, was it possible? It might have been possible if I like really killed myself, but no, I got a ton done. I got a ton done that week, and that's as far as I got. And so once I answered that, I said to myself, okay, I'm just gonna tell him that's as far as I could get, and this is the progress, and this is what I'm gonna do next. Very small amount of negative emotion, basically no negative emotion, and we could focus on what we're doing instead.
So
Any thoughts come to mind for that?
I don't know. If you have two tasks that you want to complete in a day and you've done your time management correctly, you would allow a certain amount of time for each task. But it's like if you're talking about stuff dealing with computers or dealing with connecting up APIs, etc. No matter how much you try to fulfill something in a certain amount of time, especially if you're stepping into the unknown, honestly, there's really no way to encapsulate. Like, there's no way to know how long it's actually going to take. You can only really estimate, and that's all that anybody's ever going to expect from you, or should expect from you, from management side. If we're talking about work, if you're talking about for something you're doing with friends or just outside of work, it's the same thing applies. So, I can say for myself, like, when I don't finish what I want to finish in a day, while there is a degree of disappointment, I am throughout the day adjusting my expectations. Otherwise, what you described will happen. You will feel this feeling of like, oh, I should have done more. I could have done more if I worked harder. If. But I think after doing these types of things for many years, I mean, you realize time management is important, so that you can at least have a idea of what you want to get done in a day. But unless you've already done this thing that you're trying to do, you have no idea how long it's going to take. So
That's true. That's true. What am I reminded of? Oh, so I actually wrote about this recently too. I wrote about time management and actually how I know myself, and I think very commonly, time management is, I would say, misused, where you treat it almost like you're in school again, and it's like a grade. It's like, oh, I set out these 6 tasks, and if I do all 6, then I get an A. If I do 5, then I get a B. But what I was writing in my post is, it's probably easier to think of time management as a tool, and the resource you have that we all would like to treat with respect is our time. And all I'm doing with time management is thinking through how I'd like to use it, and then if the time turns out to be not correct, then I can immediately adjust my schedule and my management, instead of treating it like, oh, I didn't get that done, so I need to do this part like twice as fast so that I can stay on schedule. This kind of stuff.
Because if the goal is efficiency, well, efficiency has there's a lot of moving parts here. That's the problem. And if it's the task that you know how long it should take, then yes, you should follow the time management schedule that you've set up. But again, if it's something that you have no clue how long it's going to take, if you're estimating in any way, shape, or form, then that's exactly what it is. It's an estimate. So it's a time estimate as well. Trying to hold yourself to it is great, but I mean, not everyone works that way. However, something that you mentioned when you were talking about the grades at school, what I find to be at least problematic for me are the people that they'll set a certain number of tasks for the day, and once they finish it, they think it's time to take a break. Let's say you've set yourself up with 6 tasks and you have 4 hours left in a work day. Well, then you should do 6 more tasks or 1 more task or however many tasks you can get done in 4 hours. So like that's the thing I don't like about, that's also a part of time management. It's not a matter of, oh, I have a quota. At least for me. Like what I mean is if there's stuff to be done, then it gets done. How fast it gets done is irrelevant if it's something that you can't really estimate how long it's going to take. So if I was working with someone like that, I would be annoyed, first of all, but I'd constantly be pushing them to try harder or to get more done. And I know there's a lot of people that would not feel good about that. But I mean, if I was in charge, that person would be let go. Do you get what I'm saying? So like, yeah, with the grade system, it just made me think of that.
Yeah, and well, I mean, it sounds. The theory that comes to mind right now is that might be a very common conflict between NTJ and STJ. And STJ says, just tell me what to do and I'll get it done. And be clear on what you tell me what to do, because I'm going to do that, and that's it. But an NTJ understands, I think to an NTJ, the tasks are in order to get somewhere. And so the tasks are kind of meaningless. It's just what you need to get done.
Right, so I mean, in that scenario, I would see the NTJ person as the person that's managing the STJ and just keeping on top of them and making sure that once they finish the tasks that I've assigned, if they have time allotted, if they're incapable of managing their own time, then someone else has to do it for them. I guess that's acceptable as long as they're open to continue to do their job. Sure. It's not efficient, however, because that requires more human resources to do one person's job. So that person would have to learn how to extend their, or I would think about how can I create a system, a self-maintaining system that would keep them accountable. So let's say they finish their task. Let's say I don't know, so like once 8 tasks are done, something automatically assigns them more tasks. So they have like a system, checks and balances, where they have to say, I've completed, which sounds a lot like Jira or something. Like, I've completed a task, but what typically happens, you have a product owner, I'm talking about tech here, they'll come in and they'll give you more tasks. I don't want that. I'd rather have some sort of automated system, if that even exists, for that scenario, for this specific STJ scenario.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine like that being automatically connected to certain rewards? Like if you do...
Why reward? You're getting paid to do your job.
You're getting paid to do your job. So...
The reward should be, I didn't fire you today. Well, okay, let's entertain the idea of rewards. What do you mean by a reward system?
Well, what I mean is, okay, so the issue with salary is they're paying you for the time. However, I think part of the pushback that people have, and the reason why they only do the job, they only do what was in the quota, is because they equate that with their salary. They say those 6 tests, if I do those, then that I deserve the salary.
Well, that's the misunderstanding with salary. So the person who thinks that way is incorrect. Salary means that when I hire you, I hire you for a job, and you will do that job however long it takes. So I'm not paying you for your time. I'm paying you for you existing at the company full time. So, okay, I used the word time there, which sounds a bit contradictory, but my point is, and again, this is why you end up having people expecting you to do overtime for free. It's not overtime. Again, if you're salaried, you work as long as you need to work. So if you have to work 10 hours in a day to get stuff done, then you should work 10 hours. However, if for some reason there's nothing left to do, on the off chance that happens, then I guess technically you would have free time. That's how salary works in my mind, at least, and that's how it's defined. If you're paid hourly, then you work hourly. The mentality is incorrect.
The mentality is incorrect. You're almost paying. I like the Korean word for talent, which is like INTJ. So you're paying for the resource of the person with the salary.
Did you say talent?
Yeah.
It's tenon.
I know. Well, okay. I'm when I say talent, I mean the HR word talent. I mean,
okay. I
mean human resources.
I see.
INTJ. And if I think of it that way, I can understand what a salary is, which is basically they're saying, hey, we want you on our team. And that's basically what it is.
Yeah, so now this is where there's a lot of different things that management has to kind of figure out along the way, or at least should already know. It's, you do need to be encouraging. It's not just like I'm making it sound very robotic, but I mean, there are a lot of other factors at play here. You have to keep the morale up. You have to have somebody who does that. You have to have, just the right people doing the right jobs. You have to have people motivated. If they're not, you have to be in touch with them and figure out why is it that they're not performing up to their abilities. I think that's what HR is for. I don't know.
Oh.
So if HR is not doing their job in that sense, then restructuring of the corporate structure needs to be restructured. Is that so? Someone, this is just looking at how our company is being ran. Who people at the top sometimes think, well, okay, I'm up here. I just tell people what to do, and make me money, and I don't care how you do it. There's already a system there. Just follow the system. That's that old school way of thinking, which maybe was effective and maybe still can be in certain scenarios. But again, it really depends on the company. What are you doing? What's going on? I mean, I can't. That's why I can't give you a definitive answer on this, because you would literally have to sit me down and show me what you have going on there, and then I'll tell you how to fix it.
Yeah.
Like a consultant, I guess.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is maybe a simpler, smaller system used to work, where it was just a quota, and then the person is treated like like produce and we'll pay you kind of idea.
Yeah, like factories. That works in factories, I'd say.
Yeah, but I hear you saying, the time has come for a more holistic system.
I didn't say that, but
system.
I'm just saying that any system, I don't care when it occurred in the fabric of time, I would follow the methodology that I just described in all cases. If I were born 100 years ago, I would have thought the same way, I hope. But I can't say that. I don't know. So point being, I'm not pointing out flaws in existing systems. I would if you have to give me a system to look at, and then I'll tear it apart. I'm not going to make a general statement.
Okay.
The only generalized statement I was trying to make was that salary it's whatever I said it was, and that people should pay better attention to what's going on in their companies. Yeah. A lot of companies in Korea fail because they don't do that.
Pay attention. They fail because they don't pay attention to
everything.
To everything.
They just think we have sales, we have revenue, or we had revenue last month, so that's an STJ way of thinking. Well, look at last month's numbers. Well, that only works for so long. And then
it's also just there's no meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just history.
You need forward-thinking people that are balancing out the people in the moment. So it all comes down to having the right people doing the right. I think I mentioned this earlier. Having the right people doing the right jobs, and having people on top of the people that need to be managed when necessary. But there's a lot of I see a company as a living creature. So like any animal, every animal is different, has different characteristics and attributes, etc. So you have to look at it case by case.
Yeah. Living creature. There's a quote I really like.
Mm-hmm.
It's by Zed in League of Legends, and he says, "Tradition is the corpse of wisdom." So I wonder if we can apply this here and say that a company that runs based on past numbers is basically kind of dead. It's not really thinking.
That's it. Yeah, I suppose I wouldn't make that statement without really thinking about it a lot, but
Okay.
I
I don't want to spring it on you like
no. And now I'm thinking about the quote more so.
tradition is the corpse of wisdom.
Yeah, so tradition is the corpse of wisdom. I mean, wisdom comes from experiences, so past experiences and experiences in the moment, but wisdom is also the projection of what like knowing what to do in the future. So it's the idea of making change. Well, I mean, I'm feeding words into something we didn't actually say, but like I don't know the dictionary definition of wisdom, but I
we can
imagine
talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, I imagine it's using what you have or had and knowing what to do with that and moving forward in a good way. I mean, really, I don't know the definition, but I understand what you mean. Tradition is like the idea that everything is the same. Like when I think of Christmas tradition, you do the same thing every year because it's tradition. It's the sentence you hear from people say a lot. I'm not against. I mean, I like Christmas, but like a lot of traditions, I would say, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So you did mention something earlier about things need to change moving forward, etc. Like I would say, yeah, I wouldn't use the word need, but I would certainly say it would be wise, to take a look at certain traditions and analyze, okay, this worked 100 years ago, but does it work now? Probably not. But again, I don't want to make that statement without actually looking at this specific tradition.
That's really interesting to think about, because as you speak, what I hear is tradition. Perhaps tradition was once very wise. Someone said it, and everyone followed it, and it was actually like quite fit for the environment. But then no one created new ones, and they just kept on repeating this old dead person sayings.
There's pushback. Part of it is pushback. When people try to create new things, those that are attached to traditions, they will push back and say, no, why are you trying to make these changes that I'm not comfortable with, or however they put it. So there's that.
Yeah, and I as you say that, I think about like basically the way the world seems to progress. Using MBTI, we can see a lot of how this works. With the STJs being the defenders of the past, they remember. Like that's how I think about it. They remember. The SJs, they remember and they maintain. They're like the library of humankind. And then the NJs, NTs, the NJs, the NTs, I think, are the ones that take in what is currently the current state of the world, and they create new wisdom. They create new wisdom.
I'm not sure if you need the P though on the end there, maybe, because I'm not sure if J's feel that way.
Wait, you don't think I say wise things? I don't say wise things.
No, I mean the NTPs might be. So you said NTs, and I'm saying you need to attach the P for that type of thinking, because I'm not sure the NTJs think that way, but I'd have to give it a thought. But my first thing when I hear the STJs are the keepers of the tradition, or however you call it, the remembers, memories. What again?
I'll say NJs. The SJs remember.
So I propose, do not try to force anyone to do anything. And what I mean by that is, people who like traditions should be able to celebrate that and have that be a part of their life. And the people who are not comfortable with that should be allowed to come up with new ideas for themselves and their groups, or however you want to look at it. Because the first thing that comes to mind is multicultural countries or settings, and then I think of being in Korea where it's not monolithic. I forgot the word suddenly.
Monocultural? Monotheistic?
No. I use this word all the time and I suddenly forgot it. Basically meaning that everyone's more or less the same, and there aren't really that many people from other countries. There's only one culture, and there's one accepted culture. There's a word for this and I'm blanking on it, but that's fine. So my point is that in a place like let's use the United States or Europe or something, there's a lot of clash in tradition there. I mean,
in the United States, okay.
Yeah, like it depends on the family's background, what country they're from. So I'm not going to get into details because none of that matters, but just try to picture what I mean. And so that can cause issues with people that are feeling like, oh, well, this is the way things are done in the US and this is US tradition. And then you have other people like, well, we don't even know what that is. We just moved here, So that's uncomfortable for people that are used to certain traditions. Whereas But it's more, we are much, well, not we, but the United States are much more open to that type of thing, and they're more accepting of it. Whereas in Korea, it's like, pulling teeth sometimes to try to get them to open up to new things. But it's understandable because they're a mono, whatever the thing is that I forgot again. So I think it just comes down to people need to just take deep breaths and think about what's going on. And I don't think people actually do that.
Yes. Well, yeah. I see.
I didn't really get to the point there. What were you pointing at?
I was just saying, just to avoid any vibration going into like the mics or stuff.
They're not going to hear that.
Oh, they're not going to hear that. Okay.
So, we were talking about tradition, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it worked before. I mean, it's there's so many. Again, I'm gonna say the same thing I keep saying. There's a lot of factors at play with a lot of things, and there's cycles going on. There's this, that, and the other thing. But I think for me, it's more looking at what's wrong with how things are being done and trying to fix those things.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is you'll have people, they're so passionate or so, I don't know what the word is, about, they put so much feeling into what their ideologies are, and that to me is counterproductive because not everyone thinks that. Not even using the word think. Some people aren't actually thinking. Some people are in the moment. Some people are thinking. Some people are feeling. Some people are looking into the future. So the point here, which obviously is wrapping up, or is gonna be, we're gonna bring it. We're gonna talk about MBTI probably because I've just used all the words from it. My point here is that we need multiple. So like the solution is not the solution. We use this word the. That's a definite article. Whereas it's like there are many solutions that have to be integrated with each other, and that is how I see it. That's how I see we should solve problems. There should be more discussions. There should be more open-mindedness, even for stubborn people. INTJs are very stubborn in their own way. SJs are stubborn in their way. And it seems like very similar. I think Js, or maybe it's, I don't know who's the most stubborn, but you'll have certain types that are more open-minded to change is what I'm getting at. And, that has to be taken into consideration. There's, what I mean? The forces have to be equal from all sides. But the problem is you'll have a force that is way stronger, and that will cause chaos.
True, and my first thought is I think every type is stubborn in their own way.
Sure. Okay.
And I mean, I think you've seen it in me that I'm somewhat stubborn in that I won't just accept what you say.
Yeah, it's very annoying because I'm always right.
But
yeah, and that also takes give and take. So I just have no choice but to waste my time repeating myself and saying at the end of the day, told you so. I get tired of saying it. In fact, I'd rather automate that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's okay.
I think when I look into history, I see almost a slow. Okay, so we talked about spiral dynamics one time, and spiral dynamics seems to be an emergence from survival into consciousness. And what I also kind of see from a MBTI lens is people being more and more open. Like I think SJ is basically the most conservative approach to life as possible. Like everything that we've learned so far, let's maintain that. But I feel what we've become more and more open to over time as we have left the worst of the survival, we become open to other solutions to our problems. The N people talk, the F people talk. It's the idea that I have coming up.
Yeah, it's just when I hear the word problem, I often want to validate or have it checked what the problem is, because I feel like a lot of things are not problems at all. We just make them into problems. We live in this culture now where everybody seems to be a victim of something or think they're a victim, and that to me births non-existing problems. And so I know this is off of what you're talking about, but it is something serious that I'd like to reflect on or like talk about at some point. But I feel like there's a degree of conservation that is important too. just because I feel like you learn from the past, and if you don't know what the past was anymore, then how do you learn from it would be my question. So even though I'm not an SJ, I appreciate what they do. So again, I'm going to say the same thing. It's like one giant system that we need all the parts in order for it to function well. It's just the issue is, are all 16 parts healthily functioning? Do they understand what they themselves, do they know who they are? Identity, we talked about last time. You know, there's a lot of, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself, a lot of factors at play. And I think if we can look at those things and solve those one by one, then all of these quote unquote problems that people talk about all the time would actually just disappear. Most of them, not all. Like serious problems that, like, I don't know, like, yeah, economical issues, like those take some tinkering, but like I'm not going to give specific examples about the ones that I consider BS just because I don't want to start a fight with anybody, but like I just feel like, you know, just if you knew yourself better and like understood like yourself, you would actually probably have fewer problems.
Oh, I think that's huge. I think I messaged you earlier saying I think humans are operating way below their potential, and I almost say that a huge access to your potential is through this self awareness, and I think it's no accident that MBTI is becoming much more popular these days, because we need some kind of tool like that to understand who we are.
When you mention self-awareness, though, I wonder immediately, how are we able to ask that of, for example, an ESTP?
Yeah.
Do we want to? I mean, sometimes I think like they know, like they do what they do, and like that's their contribution to society. I wonder if they're capable of it. I guess is the question, or
Okay.
whether it would just break them down.
Okay, so here's a theory I have, which is that actually a big blocker in the past for self awareness has been not not speaking empathy into people's lives and not letting people act as they naturally do. And so often I think ESTPs, in order to act as themselves, they need to like ignore everyone around them a lot of times.
Right, but empathy is an interesting word here. Not interesting, but I feel like that can't be asked of everyone. Does everyone contain the ability to be empathetic? Is my question.
Oh, maybe not, and it's not necessary. But my theory is, if I speak to an ESTP and I speak as if I completely understand them, I think there are some like very primitive centers of resistance in their mind that hear that and relax. Because I think a lot, actually, especially ESTPs, because my father is an ESTP. They know that there's certain expectations of them that they can't fulfill. They've never been able to fulfill it in their lives. And if I say, yeah, that makes complete sense, because that's who you are. This is who you are. I have the theory that if you can speak who people are into their ears, that there is like this unconscious fear or fear and resistance inside of them that can finally rest.
You used an interesting word there, theory. I know S types to not be. They seem to be kind of against that word or that ideology. So how does one speak? Because you mentioned something about. It sounded like you were saying to pretend that you understand them. Because you said like that will relax them, and so that sounds like something an INTJ would do just to get what he or she wants. But like, isn't it better to truly know? Is what I was thinking. Like what's going on in their mind, and then I thought, well, that we're not maybe physically capable of that, or that's too much of an ask for everyone. Because like, my mind wants to come up with the perfect solution for everyone, but I'm immediately just thinking it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And namely because some people just their lives are hard enough as it is. First of all, like survival is still the name of the game for them. Like we can't expect them to sit down with us and talk theories and like, well, if you're just more empathetic, like what does that word mean? They don't even know. And this is not me talking down at all. I'm actually trying to be empathetic here, if that's even possible for me. And point is, it's like I just feel that a large number of people would just it just wouldn't even, it's not in their vernacular and it's not in their mindset and they're not going to be open to it and they're not even, they're just like, why? That's a waste of time. So.
Oh, it's true. It's true. So, but okay, I'll just speak
So
to.
I'm sorry, but the nihilist in me wants to say, why bother? So that's
Well,
what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I'll speak to the two ESTPs I know in my life.
Okay.
They are open to way more than they used to be, and I didn't have to say much at all. I just had to understand who they are.
So you caused that change in them?
I wouldn't say I caused it, but I would.
Not exist.
I would say that by not understanding them, I resist them, and just I unconsciously resisted them, and so they couldn't be themselves, and so they resisted me. But once I understand how they are, and I allow that, I almost have this feeling that when they are allowed to be themselves, is there a different word I can use instead of theory?
No, because you're still going to be describing the same thing that S's are against altogether.
Okay, so conjecture.
Which is forward thinking. That's still forward.
Yeah, this is my idea. My idea is.
They don't like ideas either. My point is like there's no words you're gonna find, so just use what you want.
Yeah, this podcast is for intuitives only. No, I'm just
okay.
just okay. No. Well, how I speak will automatically repel all out of sensors. That's true. Let me get back on the track. My theory is, once ESTPs are allowed to act as ESTPs, then now they have the cognitive space to consider other viewpoints, as opposed to constantly having to assert that this is how they want to live all the time.
I mean, I can't really speak much to that because I don't know how much space they need, and not everyone's going to have the space they require. If we're talking about physical space, if we're talking about mental space, that's up to them to figure out. And accepting people, yeah, that's something I learned. Like, people have been repelled by me because they thought, well, you're such a nice person, but I'm not right for you, so that's why I think it's better that we don't hang out or whatever, like however they might have put it. But I'm like, no, I accept everything you do. But the thing is, a lot of times they want you to participate in the actions.
Yes.
So what do you do there? Because I will not change who I am just so that they can be themselves.
So
what are we asking here?
I just think the larger problem, the larger issue in that interaction is self-awareness and other person awareness. I think I know for a lot of my life I thought, oh, people can change, anyone can learn to do anything.
I'm pretty skeptical of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, but with that view, I feel like I unintentionally, I see a lot of truth in MBTI. I unintentionally resisted who they were. I'm like, oh, if you just say nice things to people, then you'll eventually become a nice person.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I've always been the opposite of that. I realize that people are going to act the way they do for their own reasons. I just respect that. I just kind of analyze whether or not it's possible to get along with said person. But point being, I'm not going to change them. I'm not really I'll adjust myself if it's necessary, but I will not change who I am. But this is usually, it depends, it's situational. If it's for, something like friendship, okay, well, that's not important. But if it's work-related, or, if it's,
okay.
What I mean is if it's related to a plan of mine, then adjustments shall be made in order for the plan to follow through. Whether that is to remove that person from the equation, or it is for me to change something in the system, whether I'm a part of the system, change something in my system's plan in order to accommodate. So you can do the same thing with friendships too. I was just saying it's less of a priority for me personally, but it's the same idea.
Can you restate the idea so that I can be on track here?
The idea is you said something. I'm trying to remember what you said, which I can't do, and so I said what I said. I don't know. I was picturing a scenario where someone is behaving a certain way and needs to behave that way because that's the way they act, their cognitive It's just how they function.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't, like, let's say that just rubs me the wrong way. I'll just use dumb word, feeling sounding words. Like,
Yep.
it rubs me the wrong way, then I tend to be repelled, just like they would be repelled if I tried to control them, which is what I want to do. My first instinct is to tell them to stop that, whatever thing that is that they're doing that I don't like. But because I don't want to change someone, especially someone I'm not close to, then I probably won't say anything. I'm more likely to just go forever. But again, like, that's why I brought up the idea, like, is it someone you just met? Is it a friend, a light friend, a medium friend, heavy friend, or is it work related, or is it plan related? Plan is, in the hierarchy of Derek, is number one, always and forever.
And so you're more likely to speak up in that situation.
That's not what I said. I said that if the system is, like, so there's always a system that's either in place or that is being worked on in the plan. And I said that if the system requires that person, let's say it's a person, that particular person, then adjustments will be made to do that.
Okay.
However, if the person is too much of an obstacle, then that person will be removed and we'll adjust slightly and find a better person. Let's say we're talking about people. I don't know what the scenario is. Like, there's an infinite number of possibilities here. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. And it's the same, like I was saying, it's the same with friendships. You don't have to be friends with everybody. Even if you really like someone and they just turn out, like, their personalities, like, maybe one person's not as mature as the other person, they don't know themselves, but whatever the case might be, I don't know. But it's sometimes better to walk away.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's on topic, but, like, you were talking about self-awareness, or we were talking about self-awareness, and I was thinking, well, it's not all that, because, like, again, I'll go back to what I said, not everyone's going to be self-aware. And, like, I just think there's certain types in the 16 types that are going to be extremely resistant to even the idea of that, because the word idea, theory, any of that kind of stuff, they're just like, eh.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so even being understanding of that, and even being even catering to that, I mean, this is me speaking with any FE, so that's something that I think about all the time. I'm always catering to people and presenting information in such a way that they can receive. But if I conduct myself in that way, I feel that the ESTP will not feel me controlling them, and thus they will now enter a more relaxed state.
Well, you're talking about the same thing as the INTJ manipulation. I will do the same thing. I will pander to someone if I want something from them. So I will do the same. I'll put them at ease. Like, I will read them. I'll figure out what it is that they need me to do in order for me to get where I need to be. That's narcissistic, I think, and somewhat psychotic. But it is in the nature of INTJ to perform that way. Depending on the INTJ, and to what degree, again, depends on the person. So, yeah, that I understand, but what I wouldn't do is do that all the time for every situation. I mean, it depends. It's situational. But it's kind of, I do think it's quite interesting. Now I'm wondering, here we are, NTs talking about this kind of thing. What are the S's doing? You know, like, do they even, like, would these thoughts ever cross their minds? What is their strategy, if they even exist, to handle? Because I find that, at least INTJs, we sometimes either ostracize ourselves, or we feel ostracized or misunderstood, and that sometimes feels like a one-way street. I feel like I at least try to understand other people, or try to come up with a theory or a hypothesis as to why I can, and then try to maybe come up with a plan to I don't know, just to see how I can navigate through that. But I'm wondering from their side how that looks, and if they've ever thought about it. And I guess we would need some S's we'd have to talk to them, but this is something food for thought for future.
Yeah.
Especially like ESTPs, ESTJs, they're all about just getting stuff done, and like ENTJs, while they're extremely similar to myself, they're not likely to just sit down with me and like wax philosophically or anything and like try to figure out what's going on. I mean, they will talk to me in short bursts, just like I would talk to them in short bursts, and then that's the end of the story. They get back to work, and I would get back to floating around in the sky. So, yeah, I'm all over the place here, but that's INTJ way of thinking and speaking out loud, but it still ties back into the same concept.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And would you like me to share my immediate thought?
You should never ask me that, because the answer would always be no unless it's something you can say like concisely. So just say, yeah, sure.
Okay. I think the feeling is mutual. I think our complete or a very natural low level of interest for what they're interested in, I think is the same in their direction towards us. When intuitives talk about intuitive things, sensors are like, okay, they're doing their intuitive thing, in the same way that we would say, okay, they're doing their sensor thing.
I mean, I would be a little more harsh. I'd probably be like, stop doing your sensor thing, or like whatever. I mean, it depends. But what I really meant is the interactions. Do they think, because like when I interact with an E-type, or when I interact with a, like let's say an ENFP or an ESTP or something like that, like I'm keeping in mind in the back of my head that this person is vastly different from me. Their thought processes, if they even have any, are substantially different or lacking. And so I should keep that in mind, and I don't know if that's empathy. It's just I call it keep it in mind when interacting with said person. But
That's empathy.
my wondering was, what are they thinking? What are they doing? Are they actually reciprocating, or are they selfish and just absorbing my care? I'm using the word care here because it seems like that's what I'm doing, but I'm just really manipulating the situation to my favor if possible, most cases.
Yeah.
What is their approach is all I'm getting at. If they
What is
have
their
one.
approach?
Well, I feel like you're trying to speak for that. I don't think you can. Is what I'm hypothesizing is that we need to. I would like to do some research here and see how we're viewed by them first of all, because if they just see us as two, like we know how we see each other, but to them we both probably just look like weird space cadet like absolute morons. Like, what are these guys talking about? Anything they say doesn't exist. Nothing they say makes any sense. None of it's real. They're just guessing, especially with INTJs. And with them, it's like, what's right in front of you, dude? Like, just check it out. Like, I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Like, that's what I would expect them to think. So, I would like to know firsthand. So, whatever. If you have an opinion, that's great.
That is interesting. And I'll say a very general thing right now, and then I'll leave it at that for now, which is I feel like more than what we okay, so what you think you might treat as like this is real and this is the truth. I have a running theory right now that everything that we think is true is actually mostly a survival instinct. It's mostly an animal thing, and that's why when people disagree, we might get frustrated. But it's actually just like living beings creating our own meanings, and then like it competing in the arena of humans, and so I feel like what they hear from you is an animal arguing for their meaning, and they hold their own meaning, and in a way, maybe to complete the thought generally right now, the discussion is where we find the most complete meaning, perhaps.
Right, but even the word discussion for some people is, I mean, and that's not. Yeah, so I would like to have those discussions, if possible, just to further the research and the theories that we have. It's mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tied to this, by the way, is why people get so defensive about their way of life. For example, I mean, so I think SJs get defensive about their way of life because it is their reality, and survival comes up when that happens. It's like my way of life is going away. That means I'm going away, and then they fight to the death.
Well, yeah, it's an attack on their identity, and that's the core of any person, or it rests at the core. So that's going to happen with any type. It doesn't matter even if somebody's in between types. If you do that, it's going to cause a problem. Yeah, they're going to react. I don't know the psyche thing. Like there's like anima and animus or something. I think it's probably at play here or something like that. But it makes sense because when you say defensive, I mean INTPs are extremely defensive too. Like the moment you like question like their like experimentations and say like but they get pissy and immediately want to argue, and they'll probably just try to either leave if they're very weak minded, or they'll insult you or what you're doing, or say like but you don't do this, or I'm doing this and I don't care, or like that kind of thing. So like it's the same exact thing. When an INTJ, I guess, if someone says something to me, typically I'll just think that they're stupid and not care. But I will probably do the same. I'll just say something witty back to them just to make them feel bad and then leave.
I might propose that your survival instinct is when your vision is contradictory to like observed reality.
Yeah, and when I have to when people make me face that, that's very chaotic. So I don't handle that very well. But it's sometimes it's humbling because there are cases where the vision is not realistic and not of this world, and so it's kind of pointless. But we don't want to know that because we want to get there on our own. Because we will get there eventually, probably by the age of 80 or 90. But because our plans sometimes take 10, 20 years. But yeah, it is a similar thing, and it is something that is very difficult to handle. And I think any level of maturity and understanding still will not completely replace that animal instinct, the INTJ animal instinct, in that realm. But it's also the same when I have a plan and I'm doing TE and I'm working on it. And I just go, there's this like a moment where you're like, that's not even physically possible. Like, we don't have, that doesn't exist or whatever, and so we have. But that's where the adjustments that I mentioned earlier come into play. Like, we're aware of that, and so the name of the game is get as close as you can to the goal until you realize you can't anymore, and you just start over. Like, we're fine with that. It's just very disappointing, FI wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really interesting topic, because that's something I've really come to realize very recently. Almost like that meaning is very animal and very survival based, in a very strange way. Even though I think it's real. What's very strange is there's someone in the world that thinks everything I think is completely BS. So I mean, I've experienced a lot of that. I meet with an ISFP and I'm like, and everything I say they think that it's just BS. So,
but they don't say so, do they?
No, they just kind of like
absorb it.
They just kind of dot and then just let it fly past, and then they talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah, and that's fine too. I think that's where, like, I've had to deal with the same types of situations. You just have to kind of like go, okay, I see what's going on here. In my case, I'll look a few steps ahead, and I'll just figure out, okay, is this going to work for me or not? And it doesn't have to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is, honestly, if they do that to me, I'll call them out sometimes. I'll say, oh, I noticed that when I say something, you seem to respond with nothing and say something else on a different topic. I'll say that. And that could start an argument, and that could actually, a lot of times, just opens the floor up to discussion. Why that's happening. That's where the the INTJ directness kind of can be very helpful. Because an ISFP, I don't think will be... They might be slightly insulted by me doing that, but they might also, if they're smart enough, they'll realize... smart's not the right word, but they'll realize, okay, there's a disconnect here. Let's see what we can do to find a common ground. And I think every type's capable of... I don't want to finish that sentence. I feel like many types are capable of that, yeah. But I have a lot more experiences to experience before I can make such a statement.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: there's never ever going to be a perfect solution. Like, there's always going to be people they're not matched. Like, you have limited time on your earth, just move on.
Yeah.
It's fine, it's okay.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm just thinking about what I actually brought up and what we ended up talking about. I think, they're related, but
as long as you don't try to summarize it.
We ended up talking about something very different.
Doesn't matter.
And I'm not even quite sure how to summarize it if I was trying to.
Well, then we're not going to. We're going to stop here. Thanks for watching.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. That was this episode.
Yep. See ya.